Everybody. Welcome to Phil and Dave's Excellent Adventures. Just Dave here. Today I'm talking about the movie The Book of Clarence. This is going to be a spoiler review, so if you haven't seen the movie yet and you are concerned about spoilers, I would suggest you go and watch the movie first before you watch this review. So Book of Clarence is a movie about a young man named Clarence who is growing up around the time of Jesus Christ, and he decides to sort of pretend to be a prophet of his own so he can kind of exploit people and make money off of them. So, as far as what I liked about the movie, overall, I thought the cast was great. I'm a big fan of, oh gosh, well, it didn't have his name here, but LaKeith Stanfield. I love him as Clarence and Thomas. He's playing two roles here. He's great. I loved him in Atlanta. He was great in Sorry to Bother You. So yeah, anything this guy's in, I'm down to see it, except for that Haunted Mansion remakes. Omar Sy as Barabbas was great as well. I really liked him. I thought he had that kind of very imposing, kind of intimidating presence. Reminded me of like a tiny Zeus Lister kind of dude almost in a way. Not as big, obviously not quite as tall, but still intimidating. Totally worked. I liked Anna Diop as Verinia. I know her from Titans, so to see her in this was cool. Yeah, she was great as the love interest. RJ Cyler as his friend Elijah, also great. I really liked him in the Power Rangers movie, so to see him in this, great character. David Oyelowo is probably my favorite person in this whole movie. He's playing John the Baptist. And he is just delightful in every single scene. He is just so funny. My favorite scene in the movie is probably with him. Alfre Woodard, of course, always great. She plays the Virgin Mary. She's awesome in this. Teyana Taylor is Mary Magdalene. I thought she was good as well. I really liked her. Marianne Jean-Baptiste as Amina, Clarence's mom. I liked her as well. Eric Kofi-Abrefa as Jebediah the Terrible. Loved him. James McAvoy, always fun. I feel like he probably only did a couple days, maybe a week on this, but yeah, that great character. I like all of the Roman people, the white guys just being jerks. The one blonde kid kind of looked like the guy from Game of Thrones. He was great. The kind of balding guy too, just very good at just being those really shitty dickhead kind of asshole characters. That was just great for this. I would love to be the asshole racist character in a black movie. That would be awesome. Benedict Cumberbatch, of course, always good as Benjamin. Chase Dillon as Cabbage. I like that kid a lot too. He was really funny. Nicholas Pinnock as Jesus, and Babs Olusanmokun as Ashley the Torturer. Throughout the cast, all great. Not one bad performance in the entire movie. Really liked it. They were all really funny. Cinematography in this is awesome. It's done by Rob Hardy, who did Ex Machina and Annihilation. He works with the guy who directed those a lot. I forget his name right now. He's got Civil War coming. Alex Garland. He also did Mission Impossible Fallout. So yeah, definitely he knows what he's doing. He knows how to do action sequences. And you can tell in this movie, I was really impressed with some of the action sequences, especially early on. There's like a chariot kind of horse race thing they did. It looked great. I assumed it was a mixture of CGI or mostly just compositing and stuff, but like it looked pretty good. You know, you film the actors sitting there in the fake chariot and you bounce them around a little bit, but like I was really impressed by the way that looked. I thought that the score was great. The score is done by Jeymes Samuel, who is also the director and the writer. He was a musician known as the Bullets, and he went on to make movies and stuff. But yeah, I really like the score and I really like the songs in this. You know, I'm mostly like a punk rock guy. I like rock and roll. I do some other stuff too, you know, but I mostly kind of stick in that genre. So like the Spider-Verse movies, I really didn't like the soundtracks of those at all. But this movie, I loved it. I thought it was great. I really liked the soundtrack. It was more kind of R&B than hip hop, I guess. I don't know much about the genre, but I really liked all the songs in this. I thought they were great. The concept, the overall idea of this, as soon as I saw the trailer, you know, a couple months ago in the theater, I'm like, that's funny. I like that. I get that. It reminds me of Life of Brian a little bit. Like, you know, it's kind of thing that like I can see doing. So yeah, I loved it. I think it's a really good, really funny idea. Like I said, that race sequence was really well done. I was really impressed with that. The fight choreography, there's a couple fight scenes, one in particular between Clarence and Barabbas that is, I thought, really well done, really impressive. Vaguely, you know, reminiscent of some other directors, like maybe Guy Ritchie or like The Matrix. There's a lot of spinny camera kind of stuff, but well done and believable. I really liked it. I like that they kept calling him Clance. They're like Clance, and I'm like, why do they keep calling him Clarence? Like, am I being the white guy here? Is like, well, isn't it Clarence? I thought you're supposed to pronounce it Clarence. But no, that's actually like a plot point where like then the woman, oh God, Verinia. Verinia pronounces it correctly. He's like, you're the only one who says my name with two syllables, which isn't really true because his brother also says it, and I think Jesus also, and his mother. But other than that, most people call him Clowns instead of Clarence, which I like that. And then there's a part where he says apostle, and I'm like, oh man, he's one of those hard T guys. Come on, what are you doing? But again, his brother, I think, points out like it's apostle, and his brother is being played by him. So it's not like the thing where the actor doesn't know how to pronounce it or he's pronouncing it weird. It's an intentional choice. And I like that. I always think it's weird when I'm watching a movie and like everyone pronounces it one way, like everyone says symbiote, but then one person says symbiote, and you're like, what's going on, guys? Let's all get on the same page here. Like I don't like that. So I appreciated that was actually a plot point and not just a mistake. I really like my favorite scene is probably John the Baptist slapping him. It's just so funny. Just every time he slaps him, it's really, really funny. It's also directed in a way that, as far as I can tell, he didn't actually have to slap him at all. I think maybe there's one where, way it was cut, but most of it is just he goes to slap and then they cut away and you hear the noise. So like a good way to avoid having to slap LaKeith Stanfield 100 times in the face. But yeah, well done. Really funny. I like that there's drug use in this. I like that his friend in particular and Clarence, but his friend is always smoking weed, like all the time, or smoking something that looks like weed, and I assume is supposed to be weed. Then at one point they're like smoking hookahs, which I guess is maybe opium or something similar to that. And they're like floating and shit. So like that's cool. Also, it like adds to the kind of surrealism and lets you know that what you're seeing is not a totally serious movie. I like that. And I like, casual drug use is always fun and relatable and, make something like this that could be a little boring, a little more fun, at least for me. As far as what I didn't like about it, I thought mostly the movie looks really good. I was actually really impressed by all the action sequences and by how good it looks. There's a few things like in that fight scene with Clarence and Barabbas where the helmet that Clarence is wearing just looks like it's made out of foam. It just looks like, foam rubber that, or not even rubber, just like foam that they spray painted like silver. And the swords they're using look a little flimsy. There's a couple scenes where it just looks like they're just like, knocking around and stuff. I don't know, maybe swords really were that flimsy back then. I have no idea, but I also didn't like that the movie has a somewhat positive religious message. Going into this movie, obviously it involves Jesus and religion, so I knew there was going to be a religious angle. I didn't know how it was going to go. I didn't know if it was going to be just straight up blasphemy, and it was like, no, Jesus doesn't exist, and he was also a charlatan, and these guys are, that to me would have been more interesting in a movie I would have preferred because I'm not a Christian. But that being said, though, I knew going into it there was a possibility. It wasn't like the Iron Claw or the Black Phone, where okay, I thought I was just watching a biopic or a horror movie, and all of a sudden now you're shoving your religion down my throat. This, at least, I was somewhat prepared for the fact that your religion might be shoved down my throat. I also didn't like the inaccuracies. Now I understand, of course, we're talking about 2,000 years ago, and the Bible isn't a historically accurate document by any means, but they've got stuff in there like, well, the whole thing with Barabbas and Clarence, like that's obviously different from the story from the Bible, but then like having Goliath and Samson around doesn't really make sense because they lived like 1,000 years before Jesus. So like Goliath and Samson may have lived around the same time. Like Goliath is 1012 BCE, Samson somewhere between 12,000 and 1,000, or 1,200 and 1,000 BCE. Yeah, I mean, again, it's funny. It's a little like, oh, hey, I've heard of that guy. I know that guy. Like, haha, there we go. And yeah, Barabbas gets to beat him or whatever. But yeah, I don't know. I guess it's one of those where you're like, okay, so you're just pulling out random characters now and not really caring about where they're from. And I guess my biggest issue with the movie, other than, the religion being crammed down my throat, which it really wasn't, but it was definitely, I think, a pro-Christian message, is the movie gets very serious, especially in the third act. Most of the movie is kind of funny and kind of silly, and it's a very much like a Life of Brian or like an Encino Man kind of movie, or like The New Guy. But then like the third act, really, like once the whole crucifixion thing happens, it gets pretty serious. And I'm watching the movie going like, oh wow, this is really serious right now. And I'm like, oh, okay, it makes sense. Crucifixion is a major thing. It's important. It is serious, but also like, I don't know. I'm watching going, they could have thrown some jokes in there. There was moments for humor. He's carrying the cross and he gets a splinter, or they accidentally put it upside down, or the cross falls after they raise it up. I think they could have come up, he bumps his head on the cave. I don't know, they could have done something to mix it up, because yeah, the last like half hour or so is just like, okay, no, this is not like a serious movie, this is like the Passion of the Christ now or something. Like, okay, that's so other than that, movie is directed by Jeymes Samuel. He did The Harder They Fall, which came out a couple years ago, and They Die by Dawn. I think he also did Jay-Z music videos. I remember seeing trailers for The Harder They Fall. It's a cowboy movie, but with an African-American cast. It sounded like an interesting idea, and I was curious to see it, but I never got around to it. But after watching this, I think I probably will go back and see it. He also wrote it and did the music, so this is definitely kind of a passion project for him. So good for him. As far as Rotten Tomatoes on this, people don't like it as much as I do. It's funny. I'm watching the movie going, this movie's great, especially the first two acts. I'm like, I'm really loving this movie right now. Rotten Tomatoes critics are at 67%, and the audience is at 78%. Yeah, I didn't really look at the reviews too much, but I would assume, I think I did see something about, I think some of the critics didn't like the unevenness of the tone of the movie. And I have a feeling that audiences who didn't like it maybe didn't like the blasphemous kind of stuff in there, would be my assumption. I honestly don't know. Budget on this movie is $40 million. So actually a little more than I expected, but once I watched the movie, it's all on the screen, it seems. Like they did a really, really good job. And it looks great for $40 million. I'm very impressed by it. But it only made about $3 million opening weekend. It was projected to make $7 million. And of course, this is a holiday weekend because it's Martin Luther King Jr. Day. But yeah, it looks like it's not, it's not going to make the 80 million it needs to be profitable. So that's too bad. Like I said, the movie definitely reminds me a lot of Life of Brian. I'm sure it's somewhat inspired by that. And also reminded me a bit of like the Ten Commandments. It's actually got kind of the same font and the same like style of writing and stuff. And like I said, if you really think about it from a plot point, it's basically just like The New Guy, the movie with DJ Qualls from the early 2000s, where it's like, or really a lot of movies, Encino Man, almost every 80s and 90s movie was kind of like, oh, I'm, this kid who has potential, but, doesn't really live up to it for whatever reason. I decide I want to try to do something like, I don't know. And I do think I wish they would have spent a little more time with him and his group kind of going around and fleecing people from it. Although they spent a decent amount of time, I guess, but I would have preferred the movie focus on that a little bit more. The Benedict Cumberbatch thing was interesting because in the opening credits, you see Clarence is up on the cross, on the crucifix, and I see a guy, and I'm like, that guy looked like Benedict Cumberbatch. Was that Benedict Cumberbatch? That's weird. And then the movie starts, and there's like this old beggar. And he's got like kind of black, dark, black face. He's got dark dirt, I guess, on his face. And I'm like, wow, this guy's really hamming it up. Who's this guy? And then sure enough, I'm like, oh, that's Benedict Cumberbatch. Like, okay, cool. All right. And then I realized like, okay, as the movie's going on, they kind of do this thing where Jesus, I think, gives Benedict the ability to just make money come out of his palm. And he goes and gets cleaned up and he looks like Jesus and everything. And I'm like, oh, I get it. I get it. What they're going to do is they're going to be like, oh, that's the real Jesus. And they're going to have that guy crucified in like the real Jesus's place. And that's going to explain why, everyone thinks Jesus is white or whatever like this. And that's not what they did at all. I think it would have been kind of cool if they did. They did kind of explain that though, while Benedict is up on the cross, there's a guy doing the painting and he's like gets mad about him doing it. So basically the same kind of idea, but like, yeah, I think I definitely would have preferred it if also the real Jesus was also a charlatan, personally. I did appreciate though when they put up them on the cross, they tied their wrist, because if you were to just put nails through someone's hand, your hands couldn't support you. It would just rip right out and you would fall to the ground. So I've seen it also, they'll put the nail in the forearm, but yeah, the idea they tie the forearm and then put the nails in the hands makes sense to me. I've never crucified anybody, but I appreciate the accuracy that they tried for that. So yeah, for this movie, I really liked it. I really enjoyed it. I think it was really well done, really well made. I didn't necessarily agree with the message of the movie, but hey, that's fine. I don't always have to agree with all the messages. So I think my score on this one is going to be an 8 out of 10. I think it was really good. I really enjoyed it. I'll watch it again. I think Jeymes Samuel is an interesting director, and I'm curious to see what he comes up with in the future. But if you saw the movie, let me know what you thought of it down in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching. Hope you have a great night, and I will see you here again next week.